It has been a week of great British giveaways. On Monday, we gave away our sovereignty to the EU in a so-called defence pact, which tied ourselves to them in what has been termed as dynamic alignment, with a deal that means that we are stuck with them fishing in our waters for a further 12 years. So basically, we have surrendered our fishing rights.
This is the first UK-EU summit. It marks a new era in our relationship. And this deal is a win-win. It delivers what the British public voted for last year. It gives us unprecedented access to the EU market, the best of any country outside of the EU or EFTA, all while sticking to the red lines in our manifesto about not rejoining the single market, the customs union, and no return.
We voted to leave. On Tuesday, Lucy Connolly imprisoned for posting an offensive tweet, one which the courts deemed incited racial hatred, had her appeal for a 31-month sentence denied. Her post was wrong, but if Hugh Edwards, who was charged with holding sexual images of children, and Mike Amesby, a former Labour MP at the time who punched a man to the ground, can avoid jail, then it makes no sense that Lucy should remain behind bars. On Wednesday, a daily record. Over 800 arrived in small boats, smashing the gangs. Doesn't appear to be making any difference. There were also murmurings of a pensioners' winter fuel U-turn in PMQs, which is welcome. Cutting winter fuel wasn't in Labour's manifesto, so they didn't really have the mandate to do it in the first place.
I recognise that people are still feeling the pressure of the cost of living crisis, including pensioners. And as the economy improves, we want to make sure people feel those improvements in their days as their lives go forward. And that is why we want to ensure that as we go forward, more pensioners are eligible for winter fuel payments. As you would expect, Mr. Speaker, we will only make decisions we can afford. That is why we will look at that as part of a fiscal event.
Sounds a bit like a U-turn. On Thursday, despite best efforts of two Jagosian women, we gave the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. So Keir Starmer's excuse as to why... So Keir Starmer's excuse as to why we are doing this...
This is absolutely vital for our defence and intelligence, and therefore for the safety and security of the British people.
Really? The only good thing that happened this week was Shabana Mahmood's plan that would see paedophiles castrated, which is actually pretty right-wing coming from a Labour Party. However, it would be voluntary, and inflation is up. I don't know about you, but I get why people are calling for another general election. Even if you voted Labour, none of this was in their manifesto. Is there anyone left that they haven't upset? 10 minutes past 4 o'clock, and before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you believe that Sir Keir Starmer has got his Chagos sums wrong after he was accused of lying to the public as he announced the agreement claiming that the deal would cost 101 million annually, amounting to 3.4 billion over 99 years. But somehow that doesn't add up, because if you then take into account inflation and loads of other things, that could then reach the 30 billion mark. And for the next Great British Debate of this hour, I'm asking, would Angela Rayner make a good Prime Minister? The Deputy Prime Minister fuelled questions about her leadership ambitions after a leaked memo showed that she had urged the Chancellor to hike taxes in the spring budget. But could this happen, and would she make a good PM? All of that on the way. As ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. Well, joining me, broadcaster and political commentator Fahima Mohammed. Mohammed, is that right? I don't know why I said Mohammed. Sorry, Fahima. Fahima, am I totally wrong? Is this music to our ears? Are the Labour Party doing exactly what the British public voted for?
I think when it comes to the Labour Party, they did have a huge sort of like people where they were voted for. And we are only hearing one rhetoric from one side, that there is so much upset. Yes, of course, you know, the fact that we need to consider the people of the Chagos Islands, for example, when it comes to that particular one, I feel that it was actually taken from Mauritius in the first place. So it was only given back in that sense. And we've got to look at it from a whole perspective, as in, what is it that it's for the British interest, not just your own opinion, but like Keir Starmer has mentioned, it is also for defence. It's also for the fact that we need to understand that these agreements have multiple factors, multiple sources, in order for us to understand why these decisions are made. We cannot just have these emotional feelings about why we are going into certain deals. And certain deals, even when it comes to you discussing about the EU, it's not that we're going back to Brexit. There's nothing wrong in businesses going back and having closer relations, because that's how business works. And at the end of the day, a lot of the fishing industry does rely on the EU, and fish does not have a passport. You cannot just say these borders are there to protect them, because at the end of the day, the fishing also comes from a lot of the waters which is outside UK borders. So again, when you're discussing things, we need to understand the industry, we need to understand the factors behind it, more than just your emotion and your actual feeling. We need to understand that it's economics. It is the fact that you have to look at it as a whole at the end of the day. So when it comes to Keir Starmer, may not be the biggest fan myself. I used to be Conservative, now Labour. Now I feel like I can't really vote for anyone that represents anyone in the actual community, to be honest, when it comes to the UK. So, I have even, ways in which of understanding that whether you can say right or left, I have even opinions where I can agree with some of the right as well as the left. So this kind of like putting in a box anymore, I don't think that we actually follow in any particular order.
I do agree with you. No, I agree with you. I don't think there's right or left, although you could say certain policies are more left of centre. But I agree with you, because the Labour Party are behaving like, in some respects, a right-wing party. In other respects, I don't know what they're doing. Look, let's talk about, OK, so you mentioned the fishing. The fish can swim from one side to the other. So if I'm in France and I'm a fish, I could swim from France. I'm in British waters and now I'm a British fish. That's basically it, really, isn't it? So I get it, what you're saying. But we do have borders, and we do have borders where this side is your bit and this side is ours. And to allow, just when there was only a year left in the deal where the fish would then be returned to British waters, as it were, to then add a further 12 years when people did vote to leave the EU, to leave the customs union, is against what was voted for by the British people. In record numbers, over 17 million people voted in the Brexit referendum. So that is a factor. And also, let's just talk about this the EU pact. We will now be aligned further and closer to the EU for many different things. And again, the British public didn't vote for that, did they?
Well, if you look at those recent YouGov sort of statistics and opinions, a lot of people that even now regret the fact that they did actually vote for Brexit. And amongst that, they're actually quite happy to go back to the EU. But even though that's not, remember,
that's irrelevant. This is a democracy. This is a democracy.
Just to do business with your allies, with your partners in business, and you're closely also geographic, does not mean you're going back to Brexit. This is business.
Well, it does a little bit, because within there they were talking about some sort of mobility scheme. So that is allowing people to come to this country just like they did before when there was freedom of movement. Yes, it would be age limited, 35 and under in different countries. Some of them were 30. But let's say take the top age limit, 35 and under. But who's a student at 35? Young people. Yes, you're young, but you're not. That's a huge door that's suddenly been opened. And I don't hear any limiting in numbers or any other sounds. The reason why people didn't want the EU was because a lot of people felt that it undercut the British worker, and in particular jobs for young people. Those young people in this country can't find work anyway. Why do we want more?
It's absolute misunderstanding and misrepresentation.
No, it's not. No, listen. That's not misunderstanding. That's not. Listen, I don't mind you, disagreeing with me, but I'm not misrepresenting. I'm telling you from my perspective and from what I can see. That's not a misrepresentation.
It is, because I feel that when you're talking about people coming here and taking jobs, and
young people, yes.
When no one's actually coming, and it hasn't even been set, and there's no cap or anything like that.
Well, not yet, no.
We have 100,000 vacancies in the NHS, over 100,000. Where are the English British that is taking over that? We have a lot of, industries and a lot of businesses that are actually there open, and everyone has the fair sort of amount of applying and having. If they don't have the education, they don't have the skill, they don't want to work. So why don't we address that instead of blaming people that are actually willing to come and work here, have the education and the skill? You're always looking at it from one perspective, as you said, it's your perspective, and it is a misrepresentation. And giving a different guidance and a guideline to what is really happening. There are people
let's address the situation with the fact that we need more nurses and so on and so forth. So you're suggesting that we should happily take all the nurses from other countries and starve them as their professionals just so we can pay cheaper rates and get them in and do the jobs that we don't have enough British people to do. Listen, what's happened is that bursaries have been removed from a lot of the nurses in this country. A lot of training and places for British people have been minimised because we can get cheaper labour from elsewhere.